You don't wake up dreaming of McDonald's fries. You wake up dreaming of McDonald's hash browns. McDonald's breakfast comes first. Ba-da-ba-ba-ba.
I was never really a runner. The way I see running is a gift, especially when you have stage 4 cancer. I'm Anne. I'm running the Boston Marathon, presented by Bank of America. I run for Dana-Farber Cancer Institute to give people like me a chance to thrive in life, even with cancer.
Join Bank of America in helping Anne's cause. Give if you can at BofA.com/supportAnne. What would you like the power to do? References to charitable organizations is not an endorsement by Bank of America Corporation. Copyright 2025.
Welcome to Dear Prudence. I'm your guest, Prudence Kristen Meinzer. I host a couple of other podcasts, including Buy the Book and How to Be Fine. Be sure to check those out if you love self-help books, hate self-help books, or want advice on how to be okay-ish rather than perfect. Today, we'll be answering questions about dealing with rude stepchildren, loving but not liking your sister, and being sick and tired of watching other people's kids. Here to help me out today is the great Traci Thomas. She's the creator and host of the critically acclaimed literary podcast, The Stacks. Full disclosure, I've been on The Stacks. I love the show. Traci, welcome to the show. Thanks so much for being here today.
Thank you for having me. I'm so happy to be reunited.
Yes, me too. You are so smart. You are such a delight. You're the perfect person to tackle some of these questions with us today. But before we get started, we like to ask all of our guests, what is one piece of unsolicited advice that you would give to the world unprompted?
My advice always is to get yourself a group chat.
Ooh.
You need to have a private space where you can talk crap about people, get advice that you need from people you trust, make fun of your least favorite celebrities. You just need a safe space to do that because people are doing that on social media and that is public and that is never good. So get yourself a group chat, talk crap, enjoy your life.
That is such a great piece of advice. And I got to say myself, I didn't even realize until a few months ago that I was in a group chat. People were copying me on this Instagram group chat, and I just was not checking Instagram very often. And then I realized, oh my gosh, I have this group of girlfriends. They're writing back and forth. They consider me part of the in gang. It made me feel so loved. And now we just send each other funny memes, check in on each other, and do exactly what you're talking about, Traci. Frequently just talk about stuff that doesn't matter but makes us feel loved and makes us feel
exactly
like
right.
We're still friends with people, even if they don't live in the same neighborhood or even the same city as us.
Yes.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. Listeners, if you don't have a group chat, start one. I promise you, your friends will be delighted. I was delighted when I realized I was in one. All right. With that piece of advice, we're going to take a quick break, but when we're back, we'll tackle some of your questions.
Planning any exciting trips this year? Something you might not be planning is learning the local language. Well, with Babbel, you only need a few weeks to learn. Babbel will help you learn real-life conversation skills in a different language. And with Babbel's speech recognition technology, you can improve your pronunciation and your accent and really blend in with the locals. Babbel's quick 10-minute lessons, handcrafted by over 200 language experts, get you to begin speaking your new language in 3 weeks or whatever pace you choose. Babbel is designed using practical, real-world conversations, so you'll be ready to talk wherever you go. With over 16 million subscriptions sold, Babbel's 14 award-winning language courses are backed by a 20-day money-back guarantee. So this year, get talking with Babbel. Let's get more of you talking in a new language. Babbel is gifting our listeners 60% off subscriptions at babbel.com/Prudie. Get up to 60% off at babbel.com/Prudie. Spelled BABBEL.com/PRUDIE. Babbel.com/Prudie. Rules and restrictions may apply.
This episode is brought to you by LifeLock. It's tax season, and we're all a bit tired of numbers. But here's one you need to hear. $16.5 billion. That's how much the IRS flagged for possible identity fraud last year. Now here's a good number. 100 million. That's how many data points LifeLock monitors every second. If your identity is stolen, they'll fix it, guaranteed. Save up to 40% your first year at LifeLock.com/podcast. Terms apply.
Welcome back. You're listening to Dear Prudence. I'm Kristen Meinzer. I'm here with Traci Thomas. And Traci, shall we get started with our first letter?
Let's do it.
All right. The first letter is titled Trip Advisor.
My parents retired to another country, and I've only seen my 4-year-old 4 times in person. They have a milestone coming up and are throwing a party. Many friends and family members I haven't seen in over 20 years are coming. My parents rented out several villas for everyone to stay at. My stepchildren are 17 and 14 and firmly in their rebellious phase. Our relationship has been nil since my child was born, despite my efforts to engage them. It hurt because we had a good relationship previously, and they have a 3-year-old half-sister and 6-year-old niece that they adore to pieces and play with all the time at their mom's, but they ignore their sibling here. They will not even acknowledge either of us if we are in the same room. No greetings or small talk. They walk away if my child tries to interact with them. My husband talks to his kids, and the behavior does not change. Family therapy is a waste because the kids just sit there silent. And their mother will not take them to private sessions we pay for. She doesn't believe in it. On our last family vacation, both of the kids ran off without telling us. The oldest was found drinking with a bunch of college kids, and the youngest left off the resort to explore. The country has a lot of crime and is poverty-stricken. We had to get the local police involved and pay a hefty thank you in the rest of our American cash. The trip was ruined, and the kids are unapologetic to this day. I am not risking the expenses, the energy, the humiliation, and losing what precious time I have with these people. My husband disagrees and says his kids are family and need to be included. I say they have zero connection to anyone on my side beyond the checks my parents send for birthdays. They met some 6 years ago when we got married, but do they really want to go fishing with my cousin and try to cook local cuisine with my godmother? His kids go on plenty of family trips on his side that I and our children are not included. Whitewater rafting is not appropriate for a toddler, but the point remains. I really don't understand him digging in his heels after our last holiday trip. We just can't trust his kids to not run off, let alone be pleasant to the people I love. I am conflict avoidant, and I've been scolded again and again that my stepkids set the pace and I just need to back off. This is fine in my own house, but not in a foreign country. I told my husband to let us go on the trip, and I would pull out my savings to come just for one for him and the kids. I made a lot more than my husband until I went part-time to stay home with our child. He called me a horrible mother and said that wasn't good enough. None of my efforts seemed good enough. I am wondering if I am deluding myself that they ever did. I am going with our child. If it's without him, I don't know if I want to come back at all.
Okay. Traci, I don't know about you, but I am screaming on the inside reading this letter.
I am screaming too, but I'm wondering if we're screaming for the same reason.
I'm curious also because I gotta say, despite how frustrating these teenagers are, I don't think this is a mom-stepchild problem. I think this is a spouse problem. I think.
Oh, okay.
But you're making a face that's saying maybe you don't agree with me?
Well, I do think this is also a mom-stepchild problem, but I actually think it's an adult-kid problem. So let's start at the start and then work through, because I think, as you're right, there's different issues that are coming up the longer the email goes on or the message goes on.
Yes.
Full transparency. I am the mom of 5-year-old twins. Okay. So I don't have teenagers in my life in that way, but I am currently struggling a lot with my kids with like listening and making them feel like I hear them and all of this stuff that I know is important for children because it's important for adults. They are not connecting to the teenagers. It says that it started when the 4-year-old was born. So clearly some sort of rift is happening, whether that's because they went from being 13 to 17 or because they no longer feel connected to the mother because maybe she's been really busy taking care of a 4-year-old, which is totally understandable, but might not feel great for the teenagers. Even if they understand she's busy, but all of a sudden, that feeling of abandonment or something from those other kids. So I think that is something that might be going on, and maybe this is not for this exact problem, but maybe if she wants to repair the relationship with these kids, to find some one-on-one time to be with each of them, to say, husband, you need to watch our 4-year-old so that I can hang out with the 17-year-old and take them to do something. Because I think that rebellious stuff, of course, all teenagers go through it, but it does feel like it's very pointed at her according to her message. So that's where I would start.
All right. Well, I think that is a totally valid point, to want to rebuild that relationship that used to be a good relationship before the new kid came into the picture.
Yeah.
But I just want to also share some of my rage at the husband here.
Go for it. Let's go.
This husband is telling letter writer that she's a bad mom.
Yeah, not
That's
nice.
That's a terrible thing to say. This husband is going on trips on his own with his own kids, but is forbidding his wife to go on a trip with their child? What? These are double standards, and this is mistreatment of your wife. You don't talk to your wife that way. And if that's what he's modeling for his kids, no wonder the kids don't respect her or treat her well.
Yeah.
This is what he is showing the children his wife deserves. And that's not okay. And that's why I say it's, in my opinion, mostly a spouse issue. I think the real counseling that needs to happen here is not dragging these teenagers into therapy sessions when they're not ready to talk at this point. They're not receptive to therapy at this moment. Maybe they will be in a year or two, but right now the real therapy that needs to happen, in my opinion, is between these spouses, the letter writer and her husband, because husband is not stepping up. Husband has 2 sets of standards. Husband is not treating letter writer the way she deserves to be treated. What's good for me is not good for thee. No, nobody. That's not okay. If you're allowed to go on vacations alone with your kids, your wife should be allowed to go to her parents' anniversary or whatever this monumental occasion is coming up. And if you want to go with her, that'd be great. But it's okay once in a while that your kids are not invited to things, just as it's okay that you went off with your other kids and didn't invite the toddler along. It's okay.
Yeah.
Sometimes not all the kids are going to be at an event. That's okay. Especially when the kids got into criminal activity last time you went on vacation together. That's bad. When you're paying off cops in another country, that didn't just derail the vacation. This created a financial problem and a potential legal problem for you and your family abroad, which is no joke and nothing to be made light of. So I think you, letter writer, should do your best to encourage your spouse to go into therapy. Ideally, a therapist who specializes in blended families, because that's a whole other ball of wax. It's not the same as just having a child, you and your spouse. You're dealing with a lot of different blending here. Your stepkids also have a half sibling on the other side of the family that you mentioned that for whatever reason they're getting along well with, and that might be because that side of the family is better modeling how to be a unified front. Your side of the family, your husband is not modeling that for his kids right now. So I am all for therapy for you and the spouse. Eventually, it'd be great if the kids joined you. If they're not receptive to it now, you can't force it. I know as a kid who had step parents, there were times when I was able to talk about things and when I wasn't able to talk about things. Being a step kid is hard. And you really are at the whims of your parents' love life. And I don't want to disparage step parents in any way when I say that, but it's not a choice the kids made to have a step parent. It's not a choice that the kids made to have another sibling. And that can take some adjusting, but the adjusting is made so much better when you have parents who create a unified front and your husband is not doing that. So please.
I think that's so good, Kristen, because also I think what we're hearing is like, or what I hear you saying and what I'm hearing from the letter as well, is that there's a lack of respect between the two parents. And I think that the letter writer maybe feels it, but is also maybe putting some of that on the teenagers, right?
Yes, I
think that might be driving a rift between the teenagers as well. This sort of feeling that she doesn't feel like she has control because she's been told to suck it up and let the kids lead the way or whatever. That's not the exact phrasing, but something along those lines. And so it seems like maybe she is not getting at the root cause of the issue, which sounds like maybe husband and her are not in a respectful relationship and they don't have this, they're not on the same page about what expectations are for her and him and them and the kids, et cetera, et cetera. So I think also some of it is maybe because this letter was positioned as these kids are bad, right?
You're
But then you
right,
get to
yes.
the end and it's like, actually, this husband is bad.
Yeah. I think that's such a good point, Traci, because I have no doubt it's probably coming out without the letter writer intending. I hate these kids. These kids are driving me up a tree.
Right,
maybe not
right.
hate, but maybe there are some strong feelings of you
Yeah.
are making everything so terrible. And the kids shouldn't have to deal with that, even if they are making your life terrible
Even if
now.
because also they're teenagers. And like,
Yeah.
I mean, I've never gonna admit to getting into legal trouble in a foreign country on this podcast, but like, I'm not gonna not admit to it, you know? And like, I turned out fine. And, you know, she says like, there's no remorse on their part, but you know, in 5 years, this might become a family joke, right? Like that might happen when they get older. Those types
Yeah.
of things usually do end up becoming, there usually does end up being remorse, but not necessarily for a 13 and a 14 and a 17-year-old. Like that might be expecting too much out of them in this moment.
I think you're right. I mean, you and I were both teenagers once, Traci, and
Yes.
maybe we didn't love apologizing when we were teenagers.
That's right. And
Yeah.
maybe we didn't feel sorry when we were teenagers.
Maybe
for
we
certain
just thought
things.
like, haha, look what we did.
Yes. Yes. Like this is a crazy, great story. And then eventually you look back and you're like, oh, I feel really bad. I was so mean to letter writer.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, the things we do as kids that are adventures are not the same thing as what a step parent has to go through when they're picking
Yes.
up the pieces. It's a slightly different
exactly,
thing. And
exactly.
yeah. So, yeah, letter writer, we feel so bad for you. We know this is tough, but please do your best to continue to exude love toward the children, as frustrating and maddening as it is. And do your best to get that spouse of yours into therapy. If the spouse will not go to therapy with you, please go on your own for your own sanity. Learn some coping tools. Ask for some homework from your therapist about what you can do to better deal with this landmine of a situation. And I would also encourage you, go on that vacation to your family with or without your husband. This is your family. Don't abandon them because your husband made up some rule that he gets to do certain things that you don't get to do. That's not okay.
And I have one more other like really practical small piece of advice. Perhaps if letter writer feels like she has to go and take the teens and the husband, if that's what ends up happening, maybe you can set up some off-campus activities for your husband and the teens to do during some of the days so that you have time to spend with your family and your loved ones who you haven't seen in a long time, like some excursions or whatever that are separate so that you're not feeling the stress of the tension of the marriage and the teenagers, which clearly stresses her out a little bit. So maybe there's things you can plan, like a cooking class or like going to a museum or something that they would want to do so that you have time to do the things and be with the people that you love.
Oh, I think that's a great idea. And by the way, I'm always in favor of that. When people get remarried, they sometimes maybe push the togetherness too much on their kids when they get remarried. But dad should still be hanging out with his kids without his second wife there sometimes. He should still just be dad focused on his kids sometimes. And so, yeah, if you're doing that in another country, even more exciting. Have fun together, go off on your own a little bit, and have some quality time, dad and kids, if they end up on this trip. But I kind of hope they don't.
Me too.
Okay, our next question is titled, Love is More Important Than Like.
Dear Prudie, I love my sister deeply, and I believe it's mutual. But we do not like each other. There's always friction, we always argue and pick at each other. We have similar values in politics, but we lead very different lives and have personalities that do not mesh. This all dates back to childhood, and I don't think it's going to change. However, when it comes to being there for each other, we are rock solid, even if we're doing it while in a screaming match. Who safely moved me when I broke up with an abusive boyfriend that drove away my friends? My sister. Who held her hand during birth and made a huge scene until they stopped dismissing her preeclampsia? Me. Who paid my medical bills when I lost my job and got hospitalized with pneumonia in the same month? My sister. Who watched my nephews 4 nights a week for a year while my sister was working nights and going through a brutal divorce? Me. She's important to me, and she always comes through if it's serious. My husband doesn't really get it. And he doesn't like her. He also doesn't like our fights when we're together. I mean, I don't either, but we only see her at holidays. We email much more often. But we're disagreeing now. So her landlord is suddenly selling, and she's trying to save up for college and carry most of the expenses for 2 kids. She lined up a new place, but there'll be a week-long gap between leases, and they have an elderly cat, so a hotel isn't good, even if it were affordable. The week-long gap will be over Christmas, so I suggested we put them up, and my husband isn't going for it. We'll be gone to his family most of the week, so it's ultimately only 2 days of overlap, and yet he still refuses. It's his house too, but on the other hand, she's my sister. It's really important to me. How do I talk to him about this?
Traci.
This is another husband.
It is. It is another husband. But there's also some other things going on here this time around, including screaming matches, fighting, people who love each other but treat each other terribly. So
yeah,
I'm curious, Traci, what your initial reaction is to this.
Okay, so my initial reaction, just like up front, cut to the chase, is let them stay at the house. It's 2 days. That's my real figured out. But I also think, maybe if you're going to do that, maybe we can set some ground rules, sisters, because clearly they do love each other. They clearly show up for each other. And this feels like I need someone to show up for me moment. This isn't just, let's go on a trip together, even though we hate being around each other. This is, my sister needs somewhere to stay. It's over the holidays when we normally see them anyways. So I feel like maybe the husband and the sister whose home they're opening, the letter writer, they could sit down and set some ground rules and share those with the sister and say, we want to help you, but husband, knows how we can be when we're together. And we need to decide that we're only going to spend a certain amount of time together while you're here. Or if things get heated, we're going to go to separate rooms, to find some sort of compromise that works so that husband doesn't feel uncomfortable in his own house and sisters can be together and letter writer can help her sister in a time of need without making it uncomfortable for everyone else.
Yeah. Yeah. I think they do need to be adults. The fact that grown adults are having screaming matches, I just got to say, as somebody who grew up with a lot of that, that's traumatic for a lot of people. Being around people
to witness.
Fighting, yelling, picking each other apart, doing all of the things on the list that this letter writer includes, that's terrifying for a lot of us to be around. It's terrifying, it's traumatizing, it's re-traumatizing. This is not just but we love each other underneath it all, so who cares? Well, a lot of people care, and for a lot of people it causes emotional injury to be in the presence of that. It's really, really tough. So, letter writer, first and foremost, I would encourage you to try and have some empathy for your husband. This is terrible. It's asking him to be in an abusive household for a couple of days while she doesn't just visit you during the holidays, but actually lives under your roof. Have some empathy for him and try to think of how that feels for him as an outsider. It's tough. It's really, really tough for some of us to be around that. And then after that, Traci, I totally agree with you. You need to start right now creating ground rules, and not just for when she is at your house, but in general. If you're in public, if you're in a restaurant, if you're on a walk together, you and your sister need to freaking be adults and stop screaming. Who does this as an adult? This is not okay. No yelling, no nitpicking.
A lot of people, Kristen.
It's not okay. This is not how adults behave.
No,
There's
right,
no time.
But a lot of people do it.
Just because they do it doesn't mean it's okay, and it is terrible for a lot of other people to be around. It's terrible for children to be around. Cut it out. Be adults. Stop raising your voices. Stop being aggressive. Stop pushing buttons. When one of you yells, you have the choice to not yell back. You can choose not to yell back. If somebody's pushing your buttons or baiting you, you have the choice to not take the bait. Please begin doing that now. Maybe you're going to read some self-help books recommended by Traci on her fantastic show, The Stacks, about how to communicate in a more healthy manner. Maybe you're going to go to a therapist, but you need to find ways now to be an adult. Just because a lot of adults do this doesn't mean it feels safe or comfortable for others to be around. A lot of us just cannot stand to be around this. And there's a reason why, because it's not healthy. A lot of us don't like to be in unhealthy situations. So you need to start right now with your sister. And then after that, I would encourage you and your husband to maybe try to come up with some sort of compromise here. And I don't think you can force your husband to be okay with someone coming into your house who's verbally violent. I know not everyone likes the words verbally violent. They don't like the word violence being used. All I did was yell. I didn't actually punch anyone. But for a lot of people, that's what it feels like, verbal violence. And not everybody wants that under their roof. So I would ask your husband, is there some sort of compromise we can come up with? Can we have some ground rules like Traci, what you recommended? fantastic. You go to your separate corners. If anybody starts raising their voices, nope, we go to separate rooms. That is it. We design the day in such a way where certain people don't need to be around each other all the time. You know, there are ways around that. But also, I would push back against the idea that the only choice is for your sister to stay with you. I have severe cat allergies, and I'm going to tell you, most hotels and Airbnbs now allow cats, and that's why I can't stay in half the Airbnbs anymore, because most of them are, if not most of them, then a very large percentage of them are pet friendly at this point. Even ones that say, we're not pet friendly. I just stayed in one for 5 days where I was wheezing the whole time because they're like, well, maybe we do let cats in here sometimes. And I'm like, ugh. So there are places your sister can go with her elderly cat that maybe you can spring for. Maybe you can say, one night we'll put you up in an Airbnb or in a pet-friendly hotel, and one night you can stay with us. Maybe that's a compromise you can come up with your husband.
Also, I was thinking maybe the letter writer and her husband could go to a hotel and have a fun few bonus nights together and let them stay at the house for the week, because they're already going to be gone for 5 of the 7 days. So it's just 2 days. So maybe they pass off the keys to the sister. She can be in the house. She can house sit for them while they're gone. They can go an extra 2 days somewhere and have fun together over the holidays before they have to go be with his family.
Oh, Traci, I think I like that one even better.
Yeah, that's really fun.
I like that idea. Extend
so you get
the holiday.
to see your sister for like 2 hours when you do the handoff, say hello, pet the cat, and then say, we're going to go have a staycation in town before we head to the airport for our trip.
Oh, I love that idea. And one of the great things about that is sometimes during the holidays, I don't know about you, Traci, but sometimes I'm just like, this is so much of me putting on the smiley face for other people. Maybe I just want to be alone in a hotel room with my husband and not put on the smiley face for other people.
And watch Hallmark Channel or HGTV.
Get some Chinese takeaway and just sit in my underwear and watch TV in a hotel room. Yeah. And it doesn't have to be an expensive hotel room. There are very cheap motels. There are lots of cheap roadside motels you can stay at. Stay at one near the airport. Those hotels are so cheap. They're not glamorous, but they're cheap. Yeah.
And they have TV. And they have things that you need at a hotel. So yes, no, I think that would be more fun. And then everyone the sister gets to feel like she's helping. The letter writer gets to feel like she's helping her sister. The husband doesn't have to be around them. They don't have to be around each other to escalate an already sort of stressful time of year. And HGTV all day, every day.
Oh, Traci, I like your solution the best of all. I love that. I love that. So letter writer, if you can spring for it, you and your husband try to stay in a cheap hotel. I'm talking like $69 a night, sort of cheap hotel by the airport, something like that, if you can do it. And if you can't, try to come up with some other compromise as far as who's in the house at different times. And above all, begin right now at this very moment to stop screaming at each other. Yeah. Screaming is not okay. Cut it out right now. Start behaving like adults right now. All right, listeners, you're listening to Dear Prudence. We're going to take a quick break, and when we're back, we'll be reading more of your letters. Stay with us.
This episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Do you ever find yourself playing the budgeting game? Well, with the Name Your Price tool from Progressive, you can find options that fit your budget and potentially lower your bills. Try it at Progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law. Not available in all states.
Hi, I'm Courtney Martin from Slate's advice podcast, How To. Online scams seem like they're everywhere these days, and our elders are particularly vulnerable.
A few months ago, my parents were the victims of a scam, and thankfully at that time, they did not lose any money, but were really scared about what could happen in the future.
That's our listener, May. Check out her conversation with a fraud prevention expert on our new episode. It's filled with tips and resources that could help you and your loved ones steer clear of online scams. Listen to How To wherever you get your podcasts.
Hey, it's Anna Sale, host of Death, Sex, and Money. 5 years ago, I talked to a listener we called Ethan. who said that our show had inspired him to cheat on his wife with sex workers.
I was a little bit intrigued after listening to the DSM podcast. And so I went on and started looking around and started, talking with people here and there.
Did you have sex?
Yeah.
I recently called Ethan back to see how he's been since and what it was like after we stopped recording.
I left the studio, I biked home, and I sat in the shower and I cried.
At Death, Sex, and Money, we tell personal stories that are real, and we stay in touch with our guests and listeners because we know that the first ending of a story isn't the only ending. We change, and the stories change. Sometimes, like in this case, because of one conversation. You can listen along and get Death, Sex, and Money wherever you find your podcasts.
Welcome back to Dear Prudence. I'm Kristen Meinzer sitting in for Janae, and I am here with my guest, Traci Thomas, to answer your letters. Let's get to the next one. It is titled, Not the Nanny.
I'm in my 20s and am an only child. I was happy when my mother started dating Mick last year, since she's probably been lonely since the divorce. The problem is Mick has 4 kids younger than me and a ton of grandkids which are barely being parented properly. It is constant chaos with grandkids being on their iPads or their parents' phones or screaming for more screen time. I work in childcare and find myself being roped into being the recurring babysitter while the parents mentally and physically check out. This Thanksgiving, I wasn't even able to finish my meal because I was stuck entertaining the kids with arts and crafts. I tried to get my mother to take a walk with me, just the 2 of us, when one of Mick's daughters all but shoved a stroller with 2 of her kids in and laughed about how we should take the kids with us because she was just so full and sleepy after the meal. I told her no. I had been watching the kids all day and wanted some one-on-one time with my mother. She could watch her own kids for an hour. My mother hissed at me not to make a scene, and we took the kids for a walk. I didn't even get to sleep in because Mick's kids thought it would be funny to send all the kids in to wake me up because they had had so much fun with me previously. Again, my mother just sided with Mick's kids and lectured me on being pleasant. I got fed up and decided to make the trip home a few days earlier. My mom left me some passive-aggressive texts about me not being accepting around our new family. I am really happy that Mick makes my mom happy, but this is nuts. These people are not my family, and I really don't enjoy driving 3 hours one way to be stuck as an unpaid nanny. I decided to skip Christmas this past year and joined some friends. How do I have this conversation with my mom? She is firmly not hearing a word I say on the subject.
Letter writer. By the way, you sound like a great person letter writer. You really do. The empathy you have for your mom, you want her to be happy, you like that Mick loves her and she loves Mick, and you really sound like you're trying to see things from everybody's point of view here. So I just want to commend you. You sound like a real adult here, but these people are treating you like you're still at the kids' table, and you are not a kid. You're in your 20s. You've said it yourself, and we know that you can get through this. Traci, your thoughts initially?
So I can relate to letter writer a little bit because my mom had a partner who was not my fave. This is slightly different than this story, but it made getting together not as enjoyable as it could be. And I think what I learned from that experience is that my mom was not necessarily siding with the partner so much as trying to convince me that he wasn't so bad. But what I was feeling was that my mom was dismissing what I was saying, and it made me dislike him more. And I sort of get the sense that the mom maybe knows that letter writer is unhappy and is trying to do the thing that moms sometimes do, which is like, no, it's okay. Like, we'll take the kids. Like, let's make this not be so uncomfortable because I don't want Mick to feel bad. Like, you don't like it. Like, I think the mom is maybe trying to she thinks that maybe she's helping the situation, and letter writer is feeling unheard and feeling dismissed, but my sense just from having been through this experience, similar, is that letter writer and mom are not actually, like, mom is not actually on Mick's side. She's just trying to make everyone feel comfortable. And I think she probably knows that letter writer is uncomfortable, and she's worried that Mick might be uncomfortable, and she just wants things to be smooth. So that being said, I think that there probably is an easy solution, which is separate from Mick and his family, separate from the holidays, to sit down with mom and just explain what's going on and why it's difficult, and be really open and say, I do this for work and I don't want to do this at the holidays. I want to spend time with you as well. Can we carve out some special mom-daughter time? I'm happy to play with Mick's grandkids and hang out with Mick's children, but I only want to do that for X amount of time. And if that means I only come for 24 hours, that's great. If that means we can have some protected adult time where all the grandkids are out of the house, that's great. But really trying to work with mom and make it about you, what time you want and you need, as opposed to making it about any other people, whether that's Mick, the kids, or the grandkids. Just talking about, like, this is my vacation too. I do this all the time. I would love to pick an hour a day where you and I could play with the kids so that the parents could get a break. And then after we do an art project, I'm going to go to the movies with my friends, or I want to go to the movies with you, or I want to go on a walk with you. And I would really like those times to be protected as much as we protect the times for the parents to get a break, or something along those lines.
Traci, I love all of that. I especially love what you said at the top there from your own experience about letter writer's mom isn't trying to pick sides necessarily. Letter writer's mom is probably trying to keep the peace. And one other thing letter writer's mom is probably trying to do is she's probably trying to court Mick's family. She's trying to make a good impression on Mick's children, Mick's grandkids. Like, look, I'm good enough for your dad. Look, my whole family loves your family. Look. And
Great
so
point.
She's probably behaving in certain ways to try and court the rest of Mick's family and show that she is good enough and show that her daughter's good enough. Look at how great my daughter is. She steps up all the time and she always offers to watch other people's kids. But as much as I empathize with letter writer's mom trying to make a good impression with the new family, you, letter writer, don't have to be a party to that. You don't.
Yeah.
And I mentioned at the top here that I think that you're being put at the kids' table here. You're being treated like one of the kids. Like, oh, you'll just play with the kids. You'll do the art projects with the kids. You're sitting at the kids' table. Oh, no, the adults, we're going to relax and watch TV and take naps while you do all these other things. And I think it's really important, letter writer, to assert the fact that you are an adult now. They're not seeing you as an adult, and they're seeing it as like, of course you love playing with kids. Of course you get woken up early by the kids and you think it's delightful because you're a kid too, but you're not a kid too. And I think sometimes parents have a hard time seeing their kids as adults, even when they're like you in their 20s. Sometimes the parents are like, no, you're just a kid too, but you're not a kid. You don't have to keep doing this. And I do think, Traci, what you recommended was great. Like, yeah, I am happy to help out a little bit here and there, but there's a time limit on that. What I really want to do during the holidays is be given the same space that all the other adults are given to relax, to have adult conversations, to commiserate, and to not be responsible for doing what I do during my day job. And I think that asserting your adulthood is really important here, because it sounds like, at least at Thanksgiving, it sounds like you, based on the language you're using, you say, I couldn't finish my meal because I was stuck entertaining the kids with arts and crafts. I was stuck. I'm going to say to you, letter writer, you can assert your adulthood. You don't have to be stuck doing that with the kids. You can say no, as hard as it is to say no. And it sounds like in your household it is hard to say no because your mom likes to react passive aggressively, and that makes it hard to say no to somebody who's going to react that way. And so I know it's hard, but I think gradually you need to work up to that conversation. And maybe it's, your mom's chain of passive aggressive text messages. Maybe it's starting to respond to that. Maybe it's getting on the phone. Maybe it's offering something else up to your mom and just explaining things. Mom, and reiterate what you said to us. Mom, I love you. I'm so happy for you. I'm so happy you and Mick found each other. This isn't about Mick at all. I just want to make really clear. I want only love and joy for you, Mom. You're the best mom. It's not about that. It's that I don't want to do my day job when I'm visiting you during the holidays. I want the holiday to be a holiday. I want to enjoy our time together. But if we can't do that, we can get together another time during the holiday season. Do you want me to come over in early January and help you take down the tree and we can have cocoa together and just catch up the two of us? You know, there's other things that we can do during this time of year and really enjoy the fact that we're family. We're never going to not be family, but I'm not your unpaid labor either. And then make clear to her, for this season, after Thanksgiving, I just need a break because Thanksgiving really wore me out. So Christmas, I'm going to be spending with friends and I'm going to be joyous and I'm going to be an adult with them. And I'm not saying that's what I'm going to do every year going forward, but after this Thanksgiving, that's what I need. And let's talk about other plans as they come up and let's make sure we still see each other even outside the holidays, as you were saying, Traci. This doesn't just have to be a holiday conversation. It can be an ongoing conversation about how you and your mom spend time together going forward.
Yeah, and I think, you know, what you were getting at the end there to answer sort of the like question at the end of the letter, which is how do I have this conversation with my mom who's firmly in the not hearing a word on the subject? I think that's part of that asserting your adulthood. I think that's part of saying, okay, if I want to be treated like an adult because I am one and that is what I deserve as an adult, I think you have to have adult conversations. I think that the discomfort of, you know, feeling like your mom doesn't want to have the conversation cannot stop you from having it and saying what you need to say. And I think that part of that is like, whether you're a child or an adult, is finding that kind of bravery for yourself. I personally am a pretty brave, bold person. I usually don't have a problem having those kind of conversations, but when it does come to my mom and her dating life, those are the hardest ones for me, right? That's a really hard one. Even for me, a person who will cuss you out in the street, you know, that's only if you deserve it. So I do feel like part of this, it's not just to assert yourself in the situation of, you know, at Thanksgiving or whatever, but also with your mom, to let your mom know that you feel strongly about these things and that you're expressing exactly what you're feeling so that she treats you and sees you as an adult. Because sometimes it takes reframing people in your life in certain ways. And your mom might need help reframing you as an adult and not just as, you know, a sort of grown-up teenager, which is, I think, what a lot of people in their 20s are sort of dealing with, is that in between of like, I was a kid and now I'm an adult, but not everybody in my life still sees me as an adult, right? So like really stepping into and owning that by having this conversation and saying, I'm going to spend the holidays with my friends. And also on the sort of flip side of that is maybe you sit down and you have that conversation with your mom and maybe you can work out a compromise even for this holiday season. If the only reason you're not going is because you're worried about it might be a repeat of Thanksgiving, maybe there is a way in having this conversation and staying open that you can do things with your friends over the holidays and still see your mom and Mick and his family if that's something that feels comfortable through having the conversation for you. That it doesn't have to be a closed, like you don't have to decide now. You have space to make the decisions as the conversation evolves.
Yeah. Oh, I love that, Traci. Yeah. Being a little bit flexible. It doesn't have to be all or nothing. You can also change your mind and be okay with this at one point and then realize, I'm not actually okay with this. Whatever,
and you can tell your friends that too. Yeah. You can say, I want to come with you, and tell them why. And also say, but if I'm able to work something out with my mom, I might be sort of a later cancel if that's okay, you know, and keep that door open too, so that they don't feel like you're being flighty or weird or like didn't want to spend the holidays, you know, so that they have options too.
Yeah. I think that's great. That's great. Well, Traci, those are all the questions we have for this week. It has been so fun sharing the mic with you again. You're wonderful.
This was great. I was so nervous because I think I usually give really bad advice, but Kristen, you're so kind. I'm just like, well, I want to say nice things instead of say mean things. So you really encouraged me to be kind and gentle.
Oh, good. You know what? When you come back on the show, you are allowed to be as mean as you want to, though. Because sometimes, you know, a little bit of sugar, sometimes having some spice along isn't a problem. Yeah. Well, Traci, can you let our listeners know where they can follow you and your work? Where can they get more of your spice?
Yes. Okay. Spicy things. No, you can listen to my podcast. It's called The Stacks. You can get it wherever you're listening to this podcast right now. It comes out every Wednesday. It's all about books. And then you can find me on Instagram at the Stacks Pod. And there I talk about books a lot as well. I review every book that I read over the course of the year, which is about 130 books. So plenty of book recommendations for you and lists and all of that sort of stuff. So yeah.
Excellent. Yes, listeners, check it out. Everything that Traci does is fantastic. I'm speaking as also a voracious reader, and even when I don't know the books that Traci's talking about, it's still fun to listen to you, Traci. It's great.
Thank you.
And listeners, you can hear more of me on one of my many other podcasts. I host a podcast for the Mayo Clinic if you want health news. I also host a show called The Daily Fail, where my friend Maura and I do comedic close readings of the tabloids, if you like laughing at the tabloids. And I host How to Be Fine and Buy the Book. Listeners, do you need help getting along with partners, relatives, coworkers, and people in general? Write to us at slate.com/Prudie. That's slate.com/PRUDIE. The Dear Prudence column publishes every Thursday. Dear Prudence was produced this week by Maura Currie and Vic Whitley-Berry with editorial help from Paula De Verona. Daisy Rosario is senior supervising producer, and I'm your guest, Prudence Kristen Meinzer. That's all for this episode, but join us on today's episode of Prudie Plus, where Traci and I answer a question from someone freaking out over how to start the talk with their kid. Subscribe now on Apple Podcasts by clicking Try Free at the top of our show page, or visit slate.com/Prudie Plus to get access wherever you listen. This episode is available for you right now. We'll see you over there.
At Mattress Warehouse, you can get our most popular queens for under $799. Size up or swap out your current queen. So where would you look to find the perfect mattress? In a little mattress store or Mattress Warehouse? Visit mattresswarehouse.com.